Welcome to this presentation on what's new for .NET and Visual Studio Code developers in 21C. My name is Alex Key, and with me is Christian Shea. We are product managers in Oracle's .NET development group, and we're going to talk to you in the next half hour about what is new and exciting for .NET and Visual Studio Code developers in the latest release. One of the major new items that we'll support are .NET 6 and Entity Framework Core 6. These are the new runtime and ORM versions that Microsoft will plan to release by November. And in this November release, we will formally certify by the end of the year the runtime and the ORM version. So breaking down piece by piece, ODP.NET Core 21C will support .NET 6. We actually support that right now. If you go to NuGet and get the ODP.NET Core 21.3 version, you'll be able to use it with the .NET 6 RC or any of the previews. The formal certification actually won't come till Microsoft releases the production version of .NET 6, and then we could do some testing, and then that would lead to the formal certification. So we plan to have that completed by the end of 2021. So it should be coming quite soon after Microsoft releases. Now with Entity Framework Core 6, it's a little more, the certification is a little more complicated, or I should say a little more involved. So it does require provider changes in our provider model because the EF Core 6 changes significant parts of the provider models that would then require ODP.NET EF Core's provider to change as well. And because of that, you won't be able to use the EF Core 5 Oracle provider with EF Core 6, but we are making those changes right now. I have an internal build. I'll show you a demonstration of using EF Core 6 with Oracle ODP.NET, and you'll see that in action. But we do plan to have that available to you by the end of this year. So that'll be interesting to see. Now for user-defined types, it's a feature we've had in the Oracle database for quite a while. Now user-defined types are what they are merely your own complex types you created that you can create in the database, and then you can create those same types on the client side, and then be able to map and share data and modify data between the two seamlessly. So you create the types in the database, you create those same types on the client side, and then they're mapped, and then you can perform operations on each and be able to share data between the two and treat them as their own entities. And there's a variable ways of creating them. You can create your own custom types. People create things like people types, or spatial types is common as well. There's also v-arrays and nested tables and reference to those objects as well. Now the benefit for this new implementation is that we're adding the ability to use these UDTs now with managed ODP.NET and ODP.NET Core in 21C. The database itself just has to be 12.1 or higher, but you do have to use the latest ODP.NET version. Now, unmanaged ODP.NET has had this support for quite a while, and with knowledge of that, we know that a lot of customers will be migrating over from unmanaged to managed or core. And what we've done is we've made the way to use managed and core versions of ODP.NET UDTs very, very similar to how you use it with unmanaged ODP.NET. There's going to be near parity of features and APIs with the unmanaged provider. So migration is pretty easy. I worked with several customers already doing the migrations, and they've all found it very straightforward. Most of the updates are minor, and they usually involve things like changing a parameter type. So instead of using in pointer, you'll change it to an object. Since this is managed code, so you have to use an object, so we had to make that change. But for the most part, no one's really had any problems doing the migration, so it should be fairly easy to do. Now we have a few features that are new to the Oracle Database 21C version. So you'll need to be up to 21C for these. And one of them is faster JSON performance. JSON is becoming a bigger part of many applications. And one of the things people like to use is binary JSON. So what we've done in database 21C is we've introduced a new JSON column data type, and this JSON column data type is internally uses a binary format. And this internal binary format has much better performance. We see it reads up to 4 times faster and updates up to 10 times faster. So if you're using ODP.NET 21C and Database 21C in JSON, you should really try out this feature. You'll get much better performance, especially if you are consuming lots and lots of JSON. Now, a key benefit for developers is that using this JSON column type, they are not going to need to change any of their ODP.NET code. So no special APIs are needed to use it. It's all internal to Oracle. We figure out, hey, you're using binary JSON, we'll do the conversion to, say, an Oracle string, a .NET string, or whatever data type you're using on the .NET side, as we would be doing anyway with this. And so the type conversion is all implicit. Another interesting feature is the client-initiated continuous query notification. Now, for those who know what traditional continuous query notification is, they are actually very similar, but client-initiated continuous query notification, or CICQN, it allows you to use it in cloud and firewall scenarios. So for those who aren't familiar, let me give you a little bit of background of traditional CQN. Well, when you use a .NET data set, for example, it's going to be disconnected from your database. But what happens when someone changes some of those tables that you are using cached on your data set? So if someone updates the data, your cache is now dirty and it's invalid and you have no way of knowing. So what CQN does is it sends a alert to the client side whenever the tables on the database get changed, because those tables on the database knows that you've registered a query with them, that you're using those tables. And then the database knows if someone modifies some data on those tables to alert your application that, hey, the data's changed. You should go and re-query the database for the up-to-date data, or at least be aware that the cache is no longer valid. So that's what CQN does, and it works great because it was out-of-process messaging. It didn't need to have a persistent connection to the database, but it is problematic in the cloud world, because the cloud world, and sometimes the world in which there's a firewall between the middle tier and this database side, will have ports closed, will limit the communication for security reasons. So in Database 21C, in conjunction with ODP.NET 21C, you'll be able to use client-initiated continuous query notification in order to support that. And what CICQN does, compared to CQN, is that it uses a dedicated connection to do the communication. Rather than something out of process messaging, it will keep it in process with a dedicated connection, one per pool, for CICQN notifications. So now you can still cache it. You will just use this dedicated connection to to be alerted whenever a change is necessary, when a change happens to those cache results. Again, it's in process versus the CQN's out of process listening endpoint, and the connection itself won't count against your pool size setting. So ODP.NET will use it exclusively for the CICQN notifications, and that's it. Now, to enable this feature, it just requires one small code change. You have to set Oracle configuration.use client-initiated CQN to true. Once you set it to true, instead of using the traditional CQN and the listening endpoint, it will convert to this client-initiated CQN. So that's all you need to change kind of the architecture of CQN. You just need to change this one property to true. So I've talked about several features. Let's see each of these in action, starting with the .NET 6 support and EF Core 6 support. So here I am in Visual Studio, and we're going to actually run these from the .NET console. I'm going to connect to an Oracle Database 21C autonomous database, and all of these demos are running against the same database. It's just easier since some of them do rely on Database 21C, and it's nice just having the autonomous database out there always running for me to connect to. So this is going to be my .NET 6 demo. What we're going to see is we are going to connect to a database and just retrieve something basic from the database just to show we're connected. But first we're going to see what version of .NET is running, and it should return to me that we're running in .NET 6 here. And then we provide the connection string information for my autonomous database. And then we just do the regular create a connection, create a command, configure the autonomous database, and then open the connection. From there, we will then indicate we've successfully connected. And then we do a query out of the database, select banner from $V version. It should tell us that we are connected to the 21C database, and it should return that to the screen. So it's very simple. I just want to show you .NET 6 running. I happen to be using here ODP.NET 21.3, so you can actually try this at home right now with your with ODP.NET Core if you want from NuGet. So .NET run. And we see the app is using .NET version 6, and that we successfully connected to the Oracle database, autonomous database, and the version it's using is 21C. So great, we know it works. .NET 6 is running with ODP.NET Core. So let's see a demo with EF Core 6. So here I have what is now the canonical example, which is the blogging context for all intro Entity Framework Core samples. This is generally used. And we have a blogging context with a DB set of blogs and a set of posts. We then provide the blog class, the post class, and then we are just going to show that we are running in .NET 6, so it will be EF Core 6 that we're using. We add a blog to the blogging context, and then we save that to the Oracle database, and then we will return the blog to the console that we just provided here. So let's try running this. So .NET run. The app is using .NET version 6, so that's great. That's what we're expecting. And here are the blogs returned, blogs.oracle.com. You can see that we've got this going, and that we're going to have this ready for you by the end of the year. So the next feature I talked about was the user-defined type support. So let's take a look at that now. So here we are in a UDT application. And this is all the sample code I'll provide to you on GitHub, we'll have the link for it at the end of this talk, so that you'll be able to try this, all these samples out yourself if you want. But this sample, what it does is it is an object UDT sample. We're going to create a person object type. I've already created it in the database, and then we are going to add this person type to there, perform some operations on it. I encourage you to, because this is going to be too much code for me to go through in great detail in this session, so I'll just give you the highlights here, but you can try this out at home when you get hold of the source code. So here we see we're using managed, and I'm actually using ODP.NET Core, so it's the managed version in the .NET Core, and we are going to create this person type. I'm going to call him Alex. I've got Alex person type. They have a name, they have an address, and an age. And we're going to add this new person to the database, because we have a table already with this type, as well as a column for phone numbers. So we just connect, we execute a stored procedure, and the stored procedure, we bind the object type. You can see here we bind the object type, and then we give the name of the type, and then we add the parameter. And then we add a second parameter, which is a phone number. And I'll show you the stored procedure in a minute. We add that parameter, and then we execute it, and that person will then be outputted to the screen to update. So what this stored procedure does is it takes this person and just saves it inserts it to the table. It also bumps up the age by 1 year or 2, just to show you some operations you can do with it. It's merely for illustration purposes. So instead of say age 20 that I have here, it should show up as age 21. So this user Alex, or person Alex that we add. And then after that, we just insert, the second SQL is an insert statement, and execute that, and then we then retrieve the results to show you what we have in the database. So let's run this. And we should see what happens. So I've already run this a few times, so we should have existing entries. But the first output should be, what is this updated person being added? It's Alex, address 2, age 21, and then we can see that the 8th row that's been added is the one that we just added. So that retrieved results, and we can see that the results were accurately returned. So there's a whole bunch of other code that I didn't cover in here, which is the UDT itself that we've created in the C# classes that provides a lot of the underlying plumbing for how to handle a lot of these operations. So that you can peruse on your own, but again, it has a lot of neat functionality, and for those who are using unmanaged ODP.NET, this set of features for managed and core will be extremely similar. You shouldn't need to do much work in terms of migration. So let's take a look at JSON and CI/CQN. So here I do need a database 21c version, and because these two features are reliant on these new JSON binary column type as well as the CI/CQN, which are 21c features. And what we're going to do is we're going to query a different table here, this J purchase order table, and this J purchase order table has a PO document column here. And if we take a look at the property of the PO document, you can see that it's a JSON. So this uses the new binary JSON. And what I'll show you is I'm going to go query this table, and it's going to return the JSON using the binary JSON type, but I'm not going to have to use any special code in order to handle the binary JSON format. It's just going to return like any other data. So besides that, we're going to use CI/CQN. So I've combined the two together. We're going to change one of the dates inside this JSON document, and when that date change happens, we should get an alert on the client side, and have that alert then also manifest itself into a update of the cache, so that we can be using the latest up-to-date JSON document from this database. So this particular J purchase order table only has one row for this PO document, so we're keeping it quite simple here. And to set up CI/CQN, what we first do is use client initiated CQN to true. Once we set that to true, we are not going to have the CI/CQN enabled for it to be enabled. And then we set up CQN as we normally would. So we connect, we create a command. I just have a little output to the screen that says we successfully connected to Oracle database. And then we create, as we typically would in a CQN scenario, a dependency object, provide the command. We indicate here that we want the registration to persist even after the first notification. So it is notified once is false. And then we register the event handler here. And I'll go over the event handler in a bit. And then we just query the database for the JSON. So command text, data adapter, data set, fill that data set, and then output the results to the screen. And here we're just retrieving it as toString, the JSON column. So no special operations here at all. For the notification handler, what we have here in the event, what it does is we're going to indicate that the change was detected. We output that, and then we just execute the same query that you just saw, which is you have the data adapter, the data set, fill it up, and then output it to the screen. So let's run this. So let's take a look at this in action. What we have is we're going to see that we successfully connect to the Oracle database and that we are returning a PO number here. A PO document. And this PO document is in a JSON format. We have this last updated date, and this last updated date will be changed. Thereby, we will change it with another user in Oracle Developer Tools, and that user will then, after it makes a change, the application itself will be alerted that the change occurred, and then we'll update the entire result set so that the end user will get the most recent results, or have the most recent results instead of the out-of-date cache results. So why don't we see that update statement here? We're updating the J purchase order, set the PO document, set JSON transform, last updated to the current state. So let's execute this. One row affected. Let's take a look again at the application, and we can see that the change was detected. So if we run it again, the change was detected. And every time you can see the last updated was updated. So that is CI/CQN and JSON in a nutshell, as well as our Entity Framework Core 6, .NET 6, and new UDT support. Let me turn it over to Christian Shea, who will talk about our new tooling support with Visual Studio Code.
Thanks a lot, Alex. Now I'd like to talk about a free product for Visual Studio Code developers called Oracle Developer Tools for VS Code. This is a free extension that's available in the Visual Studio Marketplace, and it works on Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. So it's very popular with Python developers, C# developers, Java developers, you name it. And it basically allows you to explore your Oracle database and your Oracle Autonomous Database right there from within Visual Studio Code. So you can create SQL scripts or run existing ones, edit your SQL and PL SQL right there in our editor. When you get results, you can format them in CSV or JSON. And while you're typing your SQL or your PL SQL, we will provide you with suggestions called autocomplete or IntelliSense that will tell you things like parameters in a package procedure or column names in a table. And then also, if you're working on a large SQL script, we have breadcrumb navigation, which allows you to navigate to different parts of a SQL script by names of packages or names of tables and things like that. We also have SQL history and bookmarks built in. These allow you to save pieces of code, pieces of PL SQL or SQL code that you use frequently, and you can save them right there in the extension for Visual Studio Code. So there's quite a few features there. There's a lot more than that, but I just wanted to give you an overview of that. We will have a demo in a moment. So coming up new is version 21.3.0 of Oracle Developer Tools for VS Code. And this introduces a lot of interesting features, but the premier one is lifecycle management of Oracle Autonomous Database. So you will now have an Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Explorer at your disposal there in Visual Studio Code, and it will allow you to view your autonomous databases and create them, start them, stop them, terminate. And you can easily download credentials files for your connections almost automatically. We make it very easy for you. So I'll have a demo of that in just a second. We also added support for case settings for our suggestions, our autocomplete. So now you can choose between lowercase and uppercase case suggestions. We have a new paging control in our results window, and we allow you to choose a default location for PL SQL downloads. So let's go ahead and start the demo now. Okay, this is Visual Studio Code. I happen to be doing some C# development here, as you can see, but it's very popular with Python developers, Java developers, etc. And while you're developing your database app, you probably want to do some SQL and PL SQL development. So we have a free extension called Oracle Developer Tools for VS Code, and you can install it really easily by going here to the marketplace and typing Oracle. And you'll see it show up here, and you can very easily install it by just clicking install. I've already got it installed, so no big deal. But let's talk about what's new in version 21.3.0. So when you install it, you're going to see a little database icon here. And what's one of the biggest things that's new in the 21.3 release is this Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Explorer node. So we've already had a Database Explorer and other features, but this is new. And so when you first see it, you're going to need to configure the connection to the cloud for the first time. You only have to do this once, but if you click this little gear icon, it'll open up a web page that'll show you how to do it. It's very easy. It only takes about 5 minutes. So once you get connected, then you'll see your cloud account show up here. So what you're going to need to do is right-click on this and change the compartment to whichever compartment or region that you're using. I already have a compartment selected here. I even have some autonomous database resources already in here. So, but if you don't, it's very easy to create one. You just click on this and say create new and give it a name. I think I already have a data world. So I'll say data world 3. I'll name it the display name and the display name and the database name, and 21C. Now, it turns out I already have a couple always free instances, so I can't actually show you how to start up on this. So I'm going to make this a paid account, but you can easily use your always free allotment to create that. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in a password here. And kick it off, and you'll see that it'll show up over here with a little yellow ball next to it. That means that it's starting. When it's ready to use, there'll be no ball next to it like the one right above it. But I have an always free instance here that I'm going to demo with. So let me just quickly show you some of the things you can do here. So right click on this, you can see that I can easily start my autonomous database, stop it, terminate it, change the administrator password, look at the service console on the web if I need to do something up there. So that's great. Also, you see download credential files. Those are the files that a app needs to be able to connect to the database. But you don't really need to do that with here, because we have an automated way to pull in your credentials files and set up a connection to the database. So let's do that. So I'll say create connection in Database Explorer, and you can see it's asking me where it wants to put the files. I'll say okay. And right now it's downloading my credentials files. Now you can see in my connection dialog that it has pre-populated it, and all I have to do is provide the username and the password for my account. It's really that easy. So if I got the password correct, hopefully, it should show up here in the Database Explorer. And I didn't get the password correct, so let's try again. Crossing fingers. Yes, it worked. Okay, so then you can come over here. Now you can run scripts against your database. You can explore it. We have a nice Database Explorer right here. You can look at your tables and your packages. You can look at the different things you can do. We have packages here. And there's lots to do. I can't really show it all here in this short period of time. But I'm going to go ahead and open up a SQL file here and just show you a couple things. So I can start typing. And you can see that autocomplete and IntelliSense will pop up and give me suggestions. So I'll execute this. You can see that we now have a paging control for our results window. So that's pretty nice. You can easily page through that. And when you're typing in, say, let me do an anonymous block and call one of my packages. So you can see that we provide a template for your calls. We actually also allow you to, as you're typing it, to just start typing in the parameters. And you can see that we will prompt you for each of them. But as you can see, everything here is in uppercase. So this is one of the other new features that we added. If you look in the settings here under Oracle Developer Tools, you can see that we now have the option to change everything into lowercase. So that you have that option. And also under the downloading for PL SQL, we have a default directory, which I keep losing here. Let me go back, see if I can find it. Yes. So by default, your downloads of PL SQL will go into an open workspace or folder, but here you can change it to another directory. So now when I go back here and I type this in, You can already see that everything's in lowercase. All right, so these are the new features that we have for 21.3.0. I encourage you to go to the marketplace, type in Oracle, and install this. Okay, well, on behalf of Alex Key, I'd like to thank all of you for joining our session. And here's some additional .NET resources you can refer to if you'd like to learn more about .NET. Thanks again, and happy coding.